Welcome to the Books on Air podcast. I'm Suzanne Harris, and my listeners get the secret story behind every book. Joining me today is Gene Abel, and Gene's here to talk about his book, What, If Anything, Is Out There. Gene is a distinguished military graduate from Penn State University with a degree in finance. He also has an MBA from Lehigh University. He began his active military service at the completion of his graduate degree. He was promoted to colonel. He completed the Army War College and was nominated for general. He received the Army Commendation Medal and the Meritorious Service Medal twice. He also worked as a nuclear weapons officer in the artillery branch of the Army, and he later became an Army finance officer. Gene, first of all, thank you for your service, and second of all, thank you so much for being my guest today on Books on Air. It's such a pleasure.
You're very welcome.
Now, I interview a lot of people, and it's been my experience that people write books for all kinds of different reasons. You know, there's an event that happens in their lives, or there's something that inspires them. But every single book has two stories. There's the story that the person who picks up a copy of the book, whether electronically or physically, and they read the book from cover to cover. There's that story that they get. But there's always, always, always that secret backstory. There's always the thing that the reader doesn't know. They don't know why that book was written. Was the author inspired by something that happened in their lives? Was there some kind of inspiration that just hit them? I'm very curious about how your book, What, If Anything, Is Out There, came to be. Tell me the secret story.
Well, I've always had an interest in this subject. Certainly the sci-fi books are written like War of the Worlds, as an example. But I guess lately, a couple of things have triggered this, triggered me to write this book, to be honest with you. Is one, there has been an acknowledgement to some degree by the federal government, the United States, that there is something going on. Also, we have seen a lot of reported sightings. And then I also began reading some of the comments of our astronauts. And not only because they were out there in space doing what a lot of us would maybe love to do and never get the opportunity, but also when I considered the types of people that would become astronauts, to not believe or assign credibility to what they're saying doesn't make any sense to me. So I guess for those reasons, I sat down and I started digging into this, and the result was, what, if anything, is out there.
Now, because you are retired Army, do you have access to information or files or pieces of video that just a normal person wouldn't be able to get hold of?
I wish I had, but no. That the way the system works is, if it's sensitive or classified information, you not only have to have the security clearance, which I have had in the past, but there's a thing you have to have called need to know. If you don't have a need to know the information, despite the fact you have the security clearance, you have no access. And that is to limit the possibility of things getting out that shouldn't. So, no, I do not have any specific information other than the research that I've been able to do.
How did you do your research?
Well, a lot of it was Googled, okay, to be honest with you. And I read, one thing led to the next. You get one sighting, you then go to that one. I read a number of books, a large volume of articles, both from the past and also current as I possibly could get. And some of the things went to as current as the summer of 2021. So the book really does have a lot of current information as well as things from our distant past.
You know, I really like the point that you made up front when you said that the people who are reporting sightings now people like astronauts, who we all look up to and value. Back in the past, people would think if someone talked about seeing something in the sky or talked about seeing something landing or talked about seeing something odd, they were considered just oddballs or whack jobs or etc. But I think you're absolutely right. There is more and more and more information. We see things now. We have video. People show you, we saw this and here's what it looked like. And you'll hear, we've all seen those news clips where a pilot is flying and all of a sudden they're reporting, what's this? Is there something in our airspace? And the other side of the conversation says, no, there's nothing there, or something like that. I mean, I think that's an important thing to talk about. And I noticed when I was reading the book and I was looking through it, that you had a very specific date in that table of contents. And I'm curious, Roswell, July 3rd, 1947. Why did you choose to make that a separate chapter in the book?
Well, Roswell really ignited the general interest in this whole subject. It was the incident that captured a lot of people's imagination. And so I thought it was important to review some of the information. And I verified, again, through Googling and through, articles that I read, many of the claims that were made by Colonel Carzo, who's one of the books that I reference in my book. And these people did exist. They are as described in his book. And so, to that extent, I have verified at least their existence and what they did. You're absolutely correct in that today the difference is if you say, I'm interested in UFOs, they don't put you in a rubber room.
Right.
They're looking at it more inquisitively, I guess is a way of putting it. We also have some verification other than just the qualifications of the person reporting the incident. We have, as you mentioned, photos. We have radar images. I think one of the most convincing points, I have a piece in the book about an incident that happened in Vietnam, I believe in 1968, where there was direct contact between the American military, the Australian Navy, and some unidentified flying objects. And unlike a lot of the other incidents, there is actual physical evidence that the Navy has uncovered from that incident that make it very, very compelling. And I think that's an interesting point that the readers will take from my book.
Let's give them a general overview of what the book covers.
Okay. First of all, what I did is I went back in history. And when I'm saying back in, I'm talking 20, 30,000 years ago. And I took a look at what our ancestors must have seen because they carved images on the walls of caves that we have found and verified. These are real things. They exist. And when you look at the images that have been carved into these rocks, they look very much like some of the sightings that we're seeing today. Now, how did they come about? No one knows. We have verified that they're real. They weren't just done in the 21st century. I then moved forward in time, as you mentioned, beginning with Roswell, because that was the thing that triggered the great interest throughout the world. I then went from Roswell, and I moved up the chain, and I tried to pick what I believe were the most credible examples that I could find, because there are literally tens of thousands of them, that show evidence of what is going on. I also, at the same time, have at least two examples in my book of bogus sightings, because there are some people out there who do this for their own publicity, to make money, or whatever. And I do include two in there that are clearly not true. So one has to be careful when you look at these things. You have to understand that, yes, there are some people out there that are lying. I mean, there's no other way of putting it. I then moved, as I said, to today, as late as last summer, with some of the announcements by the federal government. Just recently, within the last month or so, an assistant secretary of intelligence for the Department of Defense has been put in charge of a new group to take a look at the UFO sightings. Quite frankly, I believe the Pentagon is a bit concerned because the number of sightings that have materialized and the fact that the vast majority of the sightings all over the world have been over nuclear weapon or nuclear energy facilities. I honestly believe that there is some agita, not only in the Pentagon, but probably in other countries, as to why is this the case? Why would there be a preponderance of sightings over these kinds of facilities? There was also another incident that I have documented in my book about two of our Minuteman sites, I believe they were, in the central part of the country, that unexplained, in an unexplained fashion, the missiles went offline after UFOs were sighted above the complexes.
Wow.
The Air Force has never, despite substantial investigations that I have found, that were released to the public, been able to explain how two sites, each with, I believe, 10 ICBMs in them, all of a sudden go offline. They weren't damaged or anything. There was no sound. There was no nothing. They just didn't work. And I believe these incidents occurred within 2 weeks of each other, and I have that documented as one of the incidents in my book. It, again, is very compelling in my mind.
How long did you work on this book? How long did it take for you to compile all of the information and then write it?
Well, I had a lot of information put together, so I sorted through a lot of things, and then I guess I did a lot more research. I would say it took about 3 or 4 months. And then after I got done with all of this, I sat down and I said, using my experience that I was fortunate enough to have in the War College, I took a look at from a military analysis perspective, and I said, okay, what if, at some point we have a UFO land in front of the White House and say, take me to your leader. What does that present to the world? Although there are certain voids in the information that you normally have for an analysis like this, I tried my best to show that, we have some real issues given the technology that has been demonstrated, and certainly if they actually land and are there, that present some very serious issues should they become hostile. Now, that's another question. We don't know if they really exist, if they come down and present themselves. Are they going to be hostile? Are they going to be helpful? Are they going to be neutral? We don't know. But I try to analyze that. And then at the very end, I also summarized, in my opinion, what I thought were the most cogent examples that I could find. And so that basically is what I did. And it took me, I would say, about 3 to 4 months of actual writing and putting together. But a lot of the research that I had was from earlier time, and I just sorted through it.
Did you, when you wrote the book, when you actually sat down and put the information together and decided what to include, what not to include, during the time you were doing your research, did you learn anything that surprised you?
Yeah, the couple incidents that I mentioned earlier, that there was actual physical evidence beyond the sighting, beyond the visual, and the fact that there are some confirmations with radar, both planes and ground, of the same incident. That surprised me. The other thing that surprised me is that in the incident that I mentioned in Vietnam,
right,
the consequence of that analysis by the Department of Defense was, and this is documented, that the DoD sent out a directive to the Air Force and the Navy pilots: do not engage any UFO.
Really? That's documented?
Yeah. Yes. There's a study that was done, again, it's in my book. The DoD would not have issued such a directive without a good reason. The incidents on the Hobart, which was the Australian destroyer that was involved, and the evidence that they found clearly indicate, at least in those incidents and in one other, that the UFOs apparently encountered had the ability to redirect the weapons used against them back to the sender.
Wow.
That is a little bit chilling.
Frightening technology, isn't it? Yeah, you're absolutely right.
One of the things that, this book was reviewed by Kirkus. You know who they are,
right.
The review company.
Right.
Their last sentence says, an engaging and sometimes chilling update of UFO sightings and controversies. That was their last sentence of the evaluation that they provided. So it is fascinating. But again, you have to be careful because there are some bogus stories out there.
Yes. And, I'm sure that our listeners are going, where can we get a copy of this book? And this would stimulate discussions around every dinner table. I can imagine people talking because this is a very polarizing topic. You've done so much research, and I think the book is so interesting. Let's tell them where they can find it. Now, it is on Amazon. And let me give you the title and let me spell some things so that you'll be able to find it. If you just go to the Amazon website, there's a long, sort of a light gray search feature box that's right there. Just put in the title of the book, and it's what, if anything, is out there, ? By Gene, Gene, P. Abel, Abel. Click on it, and the book comes right up. Now, if you've never noticed, or if you've never purchased a book on Amazon before, if you've never been to Amazon before, when you see the cover of the book, in the upper right-hand corner, there are 2 words that say, look inside. All you have to do is put your cursor on those 2 words, click on it, and the book opens. And I'm always doing air quotes when I say that because it's electronic. It opens electronically, and that allows you to read an excerpt. You can also see the table of contents so that you can see what all is in the book, and you can buy it there on that Amazon page. Now, I know that some of our listeners prefer not to purchase their books from Amazon because obviously they're the big bookseller in every market right now. Gene, is the book available other places if they want to go somewhere else?
Sure. Simon & Schuster for one, Barnes & Noble, Goodreads, and if you Google the book per se, it will come up with a whole number of sources if you choose not to use Amazon. But it is readily available. It is out there. It is both a soft cover as well as an ebook.
And I know that a lot of books, if you prefer a brick and mortar store, if you walk into a brick and mortar store and you simply know the name of the book and the author, you can order it directly, and they'll get it right there, and you can have it in your hands.
That's
now,
correct.
You've got a website. Let's give the website address to our listeners.
Okay, my website is GeneAbelBooks.com. That's Gene P. Abel Books, plural.com. And my website has information about all my books. It has a YouTube, which talks about me as an author. And I believe there are YouTubes advertising one of my time travel books going back, and also my romance novel, The End of Destiny. So you can get a better perspective about me and what I'm up to, and including what, if anything, is out there.
Yeah, you're a Renaissance man. I mean, you and I have talked before, and I know that you have this interest in aliens, but you've also written a romance novel that we're going to talk about in the coming months. You're truly, when I look at what you've done, I'm absolutely amazed at the kinds of things that you've been able to write. Now, you're also on social media. Tell me where the listeners can find you on social media.
Well, Facebook, Instagram are the principal ones that I'm on. I have both a personal account on Facebook as well as a best-selling author account on Facebook. I will answer you. If you take a look at my website, you'll also see there is the ability to send me a question or a message, and that will come to my email address if you send me something, and I'll be happy to answer anything for you. I also have offered to if people, some people want to have their book autographed. If you buy a copy of one of my books and you send it to me with about $3 in postage, which is about the average that it costs, I'll be happy to autograph it and return it to you. I would like to do it for nothing, but the $3 postage is pretty much what you make of a book, so believe it or not.
Exactly.
But I have done that for others, and some people don't care, other people do. But I thought I'd mention that.
Oh, I think that's a wonderful offer, and you're absolutely right. I don't think there's anything more special than having a book autographed by the author and knowing, it just changes things. And I also think that it's very powerful for our listeners to hear your voice and to hear what you think about what you've written. I always think that's a very, very powerful thing for us to be able to do. And along those same lines, our time is running out. And I always like to give an author the opportunity to have the last word about their book. Now, you and I have talked before, so you know that I'm going to ask you about what the big takeaway is. This is a very interesting book. It's well-researched. You've done a great job. It's thought-provoking. It will be argument-provoking. When the reader finishes reading the book and they close that back cover, either metaphorically or physically for the last time, what do you want that person to take away from your book?
Well, first of all, thank you for your comments. I'm very appreciative to enjoy talking with you. I will quote from the very last sentence on the summary of my book. This book will help the reader decide if UFOs are real. It may also stimulate a desire to seek additional information to answer the question, are we alone in this universe?
Gene, you are nothing if not thought-provoking. Oh, it's such a pleasure to always talk with you. Thank you so much for being my guest on Books on Air.
Thank you. Be safe, and we'll talk later. Remember,
you can find a copy of Gene's book, What If Anything Is Out There, on Amazon, and it's by Gene, Genep, Abel, Abel. You've been listening to the Books on Air podcast, brought to you on webtalkradio.net. You can also hear this podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. I'm Suzanne Harris, and I hope you'll join me for our next Books on Air podcast, because remember, you absolutely never know who's going to be here, and you have no idea what we're going to talk about. Thank you so very much for listening.